Welcome to my first YouTube video. I'm gonna show you how I do stained glass painting. If you're a professional, you will probably not learn too much from this one, so this is more for the beginners or people who just would like to find out how it's done. And this piece, even though it looks pretty simple, I try to use a lot of different techniques here and also different ways of painting. So I'll be using enamels, glass paints, and also glass stains, as well as I'll be showing you how to sandblast, so stay tuned. I used a pretty well-known medieval woodcut for this piece of Vlad Tepes, also known as Dracula, and just to make it more interesting, I made my own background and frame, as you can see. So it's a good way to add something of your own. And later on I will be posting videos of how I do like pretty realistic portraits, but I thought this one is a good way to start with like a woodcut type of portrait. So here you have my design and also my pieces of glass. And I didn't film the way I cut glass because I feel like there's enough of good YouTube videos showing you how to cut your glass. And I'm gonna start with the background pieces. So as you see, I am using completely clear glass, and I also have this kind of homemade tool, like a net, old toothbrush, and also I have mixed my blue enamel here. So what I'm gonna do is dip it in and shake it off and then try on the side, see how it works. And it's actually like a handheld airbrush basically if you don't have airbrush. Like I don't have a professional airbrush, so this is a great little tool to use, and it can give you really nice surface. Just take your time and slowly spray it on until you have a nice even surface of enamel. So while these pieces are going in the kiln into the fire, I will continue by painting the lines. And some artists like to draw on the reverse side, which would be me, and some people draw on the right side. I prefer to do it on reverse. It's a bit more annoying, of course, because you have to reverse your design, but I think it looks much better, especially small pieces like this where you might be able to go and look at it up close. I prefer to have a completely flat, clear, nice surface. That's why I paint on the so-called wrong side, but it's ultimately up to you. And also remember, you shouldn't be mixing enamels and paints on the same side. So my enamels I always put on the front and my lines on the back. Also, just in case you don't know, I just want to warn you, please be careful while using these paints. They are full of metals and tiny particles of glass which you don't want to inhale into your lungs. So always wear a mask, and I will also suggest to wear gloves so you don't get lead into your, maybe you have smoke cut or anything. This is carcinogenic and it's especially bad for the reproductive organs. So I'm mixing my black paint, and I mix it for a long time until I'm happy with the way it feels, and I always compare it to the thickness of like a thick cream that you put in your coffee, so something like that. You need a good brush for that with long hair. It will be very difficult for you to make a good line if your brush is awful. So please invest. They might be a little expensive, but if you take care of them, they will last you forever. So here I am making some lines. And try to do it with confidence. You can always fix up the little mistakes later once the paint is dry. Like, try not to be slow, and I think it's the most important part of doing lines. You have to be quite quick and just trust yourself. So practice, practice, practice. So here I'm outlining the face, and then I'll do the rest. While I'm doing this, I just want to tell you where I learned to do glass painting. I'm studying at Vilnius Academy of Fine Arts. If you don't know where Vilnius is, it's in a small country in the Baltic states called Lithuania. And as far as I know, it's one of the few places where you can still do stained glass on like an academic level. So if you have difficulty finding a place to apprentice where you live, you should consider moving to Vilnius. Anyway, so my lines were done and they are dry. Please remember, you're still not supposed to touch it with your fingers. It's dry, but it's still in powder form. So here I'm using a needle. You can use whatever sharp tool you like. And I'm like kind of cleaning up and making lines straight where I made a little mistake. Here I'm mixing up a bit of a green enamel. So I do it very roughly and just get it in there because, I mean, it's a medieval style piece, so not everything needs to be very smooth. Sometimes I like when you can see, where the brush went. And now I have these pieces which I now flip again on the right side, so the black is in the back, remember that. And then I'm again using enamel, a yellow one, and my magic tool to spray it on top. And of course I could have just used a piece of yellow glass instead of clear glass, but I like to mix it up. I like to mix redly colored glass with the glass that I color myself. It has different feel to it. And like I said, I like when you can see that something is like handmade and has little imperfections. I think that's character to the piece. And enamels don't always look how they will look when they fired. So this one looks very brown, but it will be bright yellow once it's fired. And we will move on to the frame, which is yellow glass. And I cover it with a layer of brown. I use the big badger brush to kind of even it out, but I don't do it well on purpose. Again, I want it to look kind of old and worn out. And then I'm using a chopstick to make some lines. And again, I first make them really nicely with a ruler, and then I kind of ruined it with a chopstick and make it look like it's not very professional. Alright, so this is the next day, and my blue background pieces are all done and cooled off. So what we'll do next is to cover it with the see-through film, and then I have to cut out the spots that are supposed to be my stars. So I'm just using a ruler and then a knife. It's a good tool to use is just a knife for cutting paper, like a little scalpel for paper. So as you see, I'm now removing what is not needed, and then I will bring it down to the machine, which is gonna blast sand onto it. And sandblasting machines, you can buy them. The one we have here at the Academy is kind of homemade, very old, but still working very well. So if you have space, you can also find tutorials on how to build your own sandblaster. Now pay attention, because I'm going to teach you a very useful trick which not everyone knows. So here I have glue, and this is 5-hour glue that is used on gold leafing. So you can get those at the bigger stores, art stores. And this is a very good trick if, like me here, I want to add a little color, like little brown in his eyebrows and his mustache. And it's kind of annoying when you have to do something small and then fire it, then you have to wait the whole night until you can keep working on it. So here I am mixing this glue and a dash of white spirit and also my pigments, paint pigments. And I kind of eyeball it. I don't have like a good recipe. You can just try it out, see what works with your brush. And here I'm putting it on the spots that I need. So it's a 5-hour glue, so it means it needs 5 hours to dry, but if you have a warm kiln, you can put it in the kiln and it will dry much faster. You can even use the hair dryer if you don't have time, or just leave it overnight. The point is it will save you extra firing for something small. So here, once it's dry, I can start putting on his skin color on top and not worry that the colors will mix together because the glue is very hardened by now. I like to mix my pigments with just water, and sometimes, especially with lines, I will add a little bit of gum arabic. It's a powder that makes the paint stick to the glass a little better. But some people mix it with vinegar. In some cases, you will use oil. So there's different ways to mix your paint, but for starters, I always suggest just start with water, and then you can move on and experiment with other stuff. And this is super fun part, is highlights. So as you can see, I'm removing some of the paint from the eyes, and then I'm coloring in his eyes with some brown. And I also keep using my chopstick to make some highlights on his nose and in some of his creases on the face. It's super satisfying. Once the paint is dry, you can flip it. Just be careful not to touch it with your fingers, of course. See how the whole thing is looking. And if you need to fix anything before another fire. And I decided I want to add some black to the red parts of his costume. And again, I'm using the net and making some rough shadows with black paint. This glass here looks pretty orange, but once you fire it, it turns more deep red. Some glass changes color after a certain temperature. Now we have to go back to our background because my stars are white and I want them to be yellow. But instead of using traditional paint or enamel, I choose to use something called silver stain. And as you see by its color, it's not silver and it's not yellow, it's red, but once it's fired, it turned the glass yellow because it does actually contain silver. So what's interesting with that it doesn't leave like a layer on top of the glass, it actually goes deeper into the deeper surfaces of the glass and colors it that way. So that's pretty interesting. So that was our last step, and then the piece was soldered, which I didn't film because similar to the glass cutting, you can find a lot of good videos on YouTube on how to do that. And here's the satisfying part, is when I use patina to turn the lead silverish color into black. You can also find brown and copper colors, or you can just leave the lead the way it is if you prefer. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was useful to some of you who are planning or learning already how to paint on glass. I know this video is very unprofessional. I don't have equipment, there's noise in the background. My accent is probably annoying. So I hope that with time my videos will get better quality-wise. But if you have any suggestions or comments, if I missed anything, you have questions, just please put them down in the comments below and I'll try to answer as well as I can. And hopefully you will check out my video that's coming up next in a couple of weeks.